What I've entitled this morning's message is the definition of a lie. Rather than being real humble and calling it a definition of a lie, I just decided to just call it the definition of a lie, because there may be other definitions, but none will be any better than this. That's for sure. Others may be as good as it, but nothing can be said that would be any better than this, because it's something that I've thought over a lot. Now, maybe I need to even explain in advance where we're going in this study. You know yourself that there are many verses in the Bible that talk about lies, untruthfulness, delusions, deceptions, deceit, hypocrisy. I wouldn't even know how many verses are in the Old and the New Testaments that speak about matters like that. So we're certainly not going to turn to all of those verses and look all of those up. Because I think we already know that lying's wrong. I think we pretty much already all know that. We know something about its consequences, such as Revelation 21, all liars will have their part in the lake of fire. We know something about that. We've already introduced ourselves to who the father of all lies is, Satan, John 8:44. We know that. I think what it boils down to is we need to know what a lie is. If we know that it's wrong, that's fine. But we have to know what it is to know when we're doing it. And there are many different outworkings of a lie. So that will be the whole meat and heart of our study that we should probably begin next week. We will not do it this morning. We'll still just be working our way up to that. We'll probably begin that next morning by looking at what I call boundaries of clarification. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to look at some of these passages, though. I think we will probably do a study, some type of study, I'm not for sure exactly what, on the subject of hypocrisy and hypocrites. That's certainly an interesting and rather prevailing New Testament theme in Jesus' teaching, particularly, as well as in other places, hypocrisy and hypocrites. I think that's also a teaching of much of the wisdom literature of the Old Testament that has much to say about the hypocrite. So I'm sure we're going to get to that. And I'm sure we will deal with some of the consequences of lying from a scriptural point of view. And by that I mean we'll actually look the text up. But what to me, in my study of this, and I'm no expert of experts on it, but I have studied it a lot, and what to me seems to be the most important thing you could ever, for a Christian, you could ever say or study about a lie is just what is a lie. What is the anatomy of a lie? What are its parts, its functions, its outworking? Because not all people could give a good definition for what a lie is. I think they'd be very restricted in what they say. Those who could give a good definition may not be able to defend their definition orally or properly, though, under cross-fire, cross-examination. And even if someone could give a good definition and defend a good definition, I don't know that they would know how to apply that definition to many different interesting examples in Scripture. Examples of the so-called justified lie that's found so many times in Scripture, which is the meat of my paper here that I had to write, which is the meat of our study. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And for me, I think in looking at that will explain what you need to know about a lie. Just in looking at all the boundaries of clarification, where something is a lie and where something isn't a lie, looking at all the boundaries of clarification and how that's been worked out in Scripture, will just give you a really good grasp on truthfulness and what a lie is. But let's start with this. John 8:44 again. Satan is a liar and the father of all lies. We've kind of taken off from that and compared that to other studies that we've done concerning religious delusions and things of that sort. Every work that Satan does is one of deceit and deception. Those are little simple statements, but they're kind of hard to comprehend. Every work that Satan does. I mean, there's no human being on the earth as filthy as that. Every work that he does is one of deceit and deception. And he'll even try to capture the Christian in this way of falsehood. You have to be on your guard. He lied to our first parents in Genesis 3. And what was that lie? Ye shall not surely die. That was just a bold-faced lie. The first thing that he said, and we'll get into that also in our study of a lie, and then we have to see now, is that a lie? He said, yea, hath God said? Remember, that was the first thing that he said to Eve. Yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of the tree? He didn't come right out and say, go ahead and eat of it, it won't hurt you at all. He just said, yea, hath God said, that ye shall not eat of the tree. Is that a lie? The second thing that he says, ye shall not surely die. Now that's a bold-faced lie right there. The other one's more questionable. Hopefully we'll discuss the first statement that he made later, but just for the second one this morning, since we would all classify that as a lie, ye shall not surely die. You see how he could have arranged that in his own thinking to mean something that Adam and Eve didn't think of. I mean, did they die when they ate of the fruit of the tree? Didn't they produce a son the next chapter? Didn't Adam live hundreds of years after that? We see that's kind of an ambiguous statement, ye shall not surely die. They didn't die in that sense, but yet they did in another, though. Amen. And so now there's a very one of our, maybe not our first, but one of our first examples of a lie in the history of the universe. I'm sure there were some before that. He had to do something to get some angels to follow him out of heaven. But as far as mankind is concerned, there's one of our first lies. You can't go back any earlier than Genesis 3. That tells me something about certain boundaries and clarifications. He said, ye shall not surely die, and he could well have meant you will not die physically. But yet in saying that, he implied something on a broader scale. Ye shall not die, meaning ye shall not die in any way. And Adam and Eve partook of the tree, and surely enough, they didn't die. Not in that sense, not in the physical sense. They died in another sense, which means you have to be very careful what you say, because you imply various things in what you say, especially when you use terms like die. Die, in a biblical sense, could be such an ambiguous term. Now, most of us would think of that as a fairly black and white term. You're either dead or you're not. But in a biblical sense, there's bodily dying, there's spiritual dying, there's a second death spoken of in the book of Revelation, so it could be an ambiguous term. Therefore, when you're talking about someone dying or something, you'd have to be pretty specific, or you could be intending to deceive the person, say one thing about death and imply something that's not true about the other, and that may be the first thing that comes to their mind. For the Christian, we must be above reproach in this area. We must be above reproach in what we think, in what we say, in what we do. Above reproach in what we think. Philippians 4 in verse 8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, and his list of whatevers, and think on these whatevers. His first one is true. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right versus wrong, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, then think about such things. This is a verse that's to govern our thoughts then. It's a divine mandate to govern our thoughts, what we think. We're to be above reproach in the whole area of lies, of deceptions, of deceit, of trickery, of guile, of delusions, of hypocrisy. So many words that fit here, so many different words you could study that would fit here. And here's the divine mandate that whatever is true and noble and right and pure and lovely and admirable, and if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, then think about these things, a verse that's to govern our thoughts. In what we say, Ephesians 4:15, speaking the truth in love. Above reproach in the area of lying in what we think, Philippians 4:8, in what we say, Ephesians 4:15. We're speaking the truth in love. and yes, in what we do. 1 John chapter 1 and verse 6. Notice how John ties in truth with what we do, not with just what we think or what we say. If we claim to have fellowship with him, yet walk in darkness, okay, we're talking about deeds, we're talking about doing things then. We lie and do not live by the truth. Now, he said we lie, and here's what a lot of people don't see about lie, because they don't run all the references here. John says you can lie if you claim to have fellowship with God and if you walk in darkness. Now, you could say, well, what he's talking about is that the person's claim to have fellowship would then be a lie, and therefore it's a vocal lie. Well, surely he means that. But surely doesn't he also mean that if one claims to have fellowship with God and is walking in darkness, then his life also is a lie? He says we do lie and we do not live by the truth. Okay, in the Old Testament, lying was forbidden by the law. Did you know that lying was covered in one of the 10 Commandments? The 9th commandment. Exodus 20, verse 16. One of these 10 that's not dealt with that much, because no one really thinks lying was covered in the 10 Commandments. Ye shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Now, maybe in the Mosaic setting, since so much has to do with trials, so much has to do with the cities of refuge, that in the Mosaic context, this has specific reference to, you need 2 or 3 witnesses against your neighbor before he'll be found guilty. Because he doesn't say, you shall not give false testimony to your neighbor, but against your neighbor. But the thrust of the passage and of the commandment is in the phrase false testimony. False testimony. False means it's not true. If it's not true, it means a lie. The 9th commandment. You say, well, you need it more specific than that. Then over in Leviticus, it is more specific in several places. And here's an important one. Leviticus 19 and verse 11. Some of the 10 commandments are just repeated here very succinctly. Do not steal. You don't have any excess baggage with that imperative, do you? Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not deceive one another. Do not swear falsely. That means it'd be a lie by my name, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Do not defraud your neighbor or rob him. Well, it could be stealing, but that could be lying as well. And you could even get some more out of this whole passage. Verse 15, do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbor fairly. And so forth. You maybe even define some more, but specifically 11b here, do not lie. So lying is forbidden by the law. According to the Old Testament, the righteous man hates lying. Proverbs 13:5. He hates lying, he will avoid lying. Proverbs 13:5. The righteous hate what is false. What is false means it's a lie, it's deception. The righteous hate what is false, but the wicked bring shame and disgrace. And remember, all false teachers are liars, and all false teaching is lies, remember. He rejects the company of all liars. He does not pick a liar as his friend. Psalm 101:7. Psalm 101 and verse 7. No one who practices deceit will dwell in my house. No one who speaks falsely will stand in my presence. Well, David speaks as a representative of God. We know that God will certainly allow no one who speaks lies falsely and who practices deceit to dwell in his house or to stand in his presence. But David is of the same opinion as is God. And then Psalm chapter 40 and verse 4 from the KJV, "Blessed is the man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies." NIV, false gods, and in the margin, falsehood. Blessed is that man. Blessed is the man. Here's a blessing on the man that maketh the Lord his trust. He doesn't respect the proud. In other words, keeping company with them. Nor such as turn aside to lies. He avoids the company of liars. Now, conversely, the wicked love lying of all things. Psalm 52 and verse 3. Here's one of the messages. We'll look at some of these elementary texts here. Psalm 52:3. You love evil rather than good. Speaking of his enemy here, David speaking of his enemy. You love evil rather than good, and falsehood rather than speaking the truth. The wicked love lying. They seek to follow after it. Psalm 62 and verse 4. They fully intend to topple him from his lofty place, and they take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. You even find that over in Romans chapter 3. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Well, that's deceit in word and in practice then. They seek to follow after lies. And also Psalm 4 and verse 2, KJV. O ye sons of men, how long will ye turn my glory into shame? How long will ye love vanity and seek after leasing? Well, that's an old King James word that means lies, leasing. How long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? We said that the wicked man, the righteous man, hates lying and he rejects the company of all liars. And conversely, the wicked man loves lying and he seeks to follow after it. And David cries out, O sons of men, how long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? Now, in the New Testament, in like manner, it's forbidden for Christians here. Colossians 3:9 we'll look at, and then Ephesians 4:25. I read somewhere that according to these passages, the Christian is he doesn't have a speech impediment, but he lives under a speech imperative, according to Ephesians 4:25. And first we'll look at Colossians 3:9. Christians are not to have a speech impediment, but they live under a speech imperative. Do not lie to each other, since you've taken off your old self, which must have been characterized by a lying nature, with its practices, and to put on the new, which is renewed in knowledge in the image of its Creator. That's very specific in the New Testament. You don't have a lot that say it this specifically. Do not lie to each other. Then in Ephesians 4:25, therefore each of you must put off falsehood. I think even King James says lying. And speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all members of one body. Well, you see, a verse like Colossians 3:9 is rather obvious to the Christian, rather self-evident. Do not lie to one another. But then our question is, but what is a lie? Granted, you almost don't have to ask that question if by asking that question what you intend to do is maybe delve more deeply into the outworkings of a lie, because even without getting into the deeper, maybe less conscious ways in which a lie can be committed, Christians still have just the basic problem of just telling lies, just plain telling lies, without even getting into the outer workings and the inner workings of how you can live a lie and think a lie, and all these things are forbidden in Scripture. Forbidden to think a lie. And remember that according to Philippians chapter 4, that fits right here under lying as well. whatever is true, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely. We're forbidden to even think something that is not true about another individual. We're forbidden to think that. That is as much in God's sight, that is as much practicing a lie as telling someone that black is white or white is black. Now, they're one of those deeper inner workings that a lot of people don't think about. You're just as guilty of breaking the 9th commandment as someone who tells mommy, no, mommy, I didn't do that, when they know that they did. To think something that's not true about another person, and you kind of know it's not true, but you're still thinking about that other individual. Say, well, what if I don't know? Then just don't think. Don't think about that person, or don't think about that topic or that subject then. Because you dare not dwell, because your mind is just one step before your tongue, you see. If you have the opportunity, you'll say whatever it is that you're thinking. Your mind is just one step before that. We've got this false conception that you have to open your mouth and say something before you've ever lied. The scriptures are going to strike at the root of that and say you have to go much deeper in this whole error. You can believe lies, that's what you think in your mind, you're just as guilty. You'll be judged by the 9th commandment. Not to bear false testimony against your neighbor. Well, if you believe some religious delusion, let's say about God, then you're bearing in your mind a false testimony against him. That's a lie. You don't have to say a thing about it, although you probably will. But that's a lie, and that's forbidden in Scripture. So lying is one of these big topics, not a little small one. It governs what you think, what you say, and what you do. And there's always an inner working between the three anyway, but to prove the point, even if you didn't think or say anything, you can still practice or live a lie, and you'd still be guilty. You could say it hypothetically, without thinking or doing anything, you could say a lie, and that's the one we all would recognize. And without speaking or doing anything, you could think a lie. Think something false about God. You say, well, no, wait a minute. What if I'm just not enlightened yet at this point, and I thought this false thing about God? Well, is that a lie? Well, the answer to that question boils down in the whole pot of stew of our definition of a lie then. What if it's an honest misconception that you have? You haven't gone out, you haven't been presented the truth and refused that, or you haven't gone out to do something wrong. That hasn't been your intent at all. It's what we might call an honest mistake. Would that fit in the category of being a lie? Well, that's one of the things that we have to work with and work out here. So remember, no speech impediment, but a speech imperative that we have. And it's an imperative from Colossians 3:9, do not lie to each other. And I think he says in Ephesians 4:25, he kind of gives us his rationale for not lying but speaking the truth to one another, and his rationale is because we're members of the same body. Therefore, it would be my conclusion that this business of lying also has something to do with church or Christian unity then. That one is really not possible without the other. Let me give you a KJV, Ephesians 4:25. Wherefore, putting away lying. I thought it used the term lying there. NIV doesn't. Wherefore, putting away lying. Put it away. Speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all members of one body. I think it has a lot to do with Christian unity. When you know that you can be honest. And not just that you have the freedom now as a Christian, and really only then do you have the freedom to be honest. You can't really avoid lying if you're not a Christian. But we're under an imperative, we're under a command of Scripture that we must be honest now with one another. And only in being honest with one another are we going to ever have any unity. Only when you know that it's your duty and right to say whatever the truth is. You know these little illustrations that I've given before, and I don't ever tire of giving them, because to me it really blesses me. Of whenever you go over someone else's house and you're hungry, you're thirsty, whatever, what is that but a lie when someone offers you something and you would kind of like it, but you say no. somehow you're denying something that's true. You would like that. You are thirsty. You are hungry, and somehow you manage to deny that. That would be a lie, and that's going to break your fellowship with that other person. Then, only when a Christian is totally truthful in all those areas will you really have any unity. Because only when you're truthful can we see the real you and you see the real us, and the real we's then can get together. Without that, we're always dealing with a figure that we think is over here, but they're really way over here. We're trying to meet them over here, and the person's not even there. They gave us a false conception of who they are. They really are way over here. We never can get together then. We're always running around in circles, chasing one another's shadows then, chasing the little deposit of lies that you left for us or that I left for you because I or you wanted us to think that about you or me, and yet we're really over here because we really are this person over here. Therefore, we never can. I can't even find you. You can't even find me. We can all be in the same room, and it's just like little bumper cars running around trying to find where you are now. Last time you were over here. Where's the real you, though? You see, until I can find the real you, I can never get to know you. And if I can't get to know you, we can't ever have any Christian unity. And we'll never have Christian unity if we don't tell one another the total truth about everything. And the truth doesn't hurt. You've heard, well, sometimes the truth hurts. Not really. Not if it's really the truth and you have any maturity to you at all. The truth really doesn't hurt. If it's the truth. Not some person's prejudice or bias or misconception, if it's really the truth. The truth doesn't hurt. The truth is soothing. It's healing. It's liberating. Remember, when you know the truth, it'll liberate you. It'll set you free. For instance, my wife, she likes these I'm trying to think of what a polite thing to call them without lying of what they are. They're long underwear is what they are. So you think of your own polite term, then I can edit that from the tape. Whatever's a polite thing. Long johns, all that's the same to me. She likes those to sleep in. Well, I know she likes them, and so I bought her a pair. And I bought it down there and brought it home. Well, I didn't try the thing on, to see how it fit or what it was like. But it's some old thing that's all scratchy and itchy and everything. And that does more damage than good to sleep in something like that. So she put it on and slept in it one night and got up the next morning, was kind of in a bad mood that morning. And I didn't know exactly why. And so it came out later that morning, and she didn't want to hurt my feelings or offend me. It came out later that morning, I really hate these things that you bought. Wish we could burn them. But there goes money down the drain, and there goes someone's kind thoughts down the drain and all of this. But still, it's better, it's more liberating for her as well as for me. I'll sure never buy her that pair again. So that frees me up. She doesn't have to wear them anymore. That frees her up. So how could the truth hurt anybody then? Only if we're so immature that hurts our feelings that someone didn't like our little thing here. I'd rather know that she doesn't like it, so I won't ever buy that again. That frees me up. I'd rather know what she does like, and so I won't ever buy that again. There's a good example of how, and I don't know, she probably didn't feel that it was scratching her until she got in the bed and it was in the middle of the night, but there's an example of whenever you know something, you need to speak the truth about the matter. Now, we philosophized about that the next morning. We discussed all about that. Now, what if it cost a whole lot of money then? Well, some people would say, oh, there are other ways, or even if it doesn't cost a lot of money, there are other ways you could get around it. Like maybe your husband, he's not a real noticing husband. He doesn't notice things that much, and so you just kind of slip it on into the trash can after a couple of weeks of wearing it, and he never really knows about it. That's thoughtful, but I don't know that would border on being a lie, because you're implying those couple of weeks that you are wearing it that you do enjoy it. And then for it just to vanish without any explanation, see, to me that would almost border on being untruthful. That's why this is really going to open our eyes to a lot of things here. Say, well, what if it costs a lot of money? Well, maybe you better not buy anybody anything that costs a lot of money until you ask them first then, so they won't throw it away. Or somehow you could do something with it. But that was a real blessing to go through that. She thought I was going to kind of be downcast or disappointed or something like that, and it didn't bother me at all. I said, it doesn't bother me. I said, we'll just throw them away. Only spent pennies for a set of those things anyway. We'll buy another set. So I wasted a little money. I would still rather know what the truth is about the matter. You don't have to suffer. I don't have to live under a false delusion that every time I see you wearing those, I just think, I'm so good. My wife's so grateful for me for buying those for her. The whole time, that's not what she's thinking. So I'm living under a delusion then. But she would be the cause of my delusion, not me. I haven't done anything. She'd be the cause of my delusion if she didn't alert me to that fact. So she told me about it. I said, well, throw it away, and that freed our whole family up for the rest of the day then. There's a good, rather recent common example. But things like that happen with all of us all the time. You see, we're going to have to stay truthful about these matters, even though as we work our way through this, and as I'm thinking about it right now, that could cause problems. You try to buy something for a loved one and they really don't like it. Still, truth has to be maintained, even at the cost of people's feelings or whatever. She's bought me things before, several things, not a whole lot, and I guess this probably happens with everyone sooner or later, if the person just misses what your taste was. And I just didn't like it. Just period, I didn't like it. And then recently here she's bought me several other things that I really enjoy. She got thinking enough to figure out, now what would he like? I can't buy what I would want him to have. We would all do that for one another. This is what I wish they had, but what would they like? If you're going to buy it for them, they've got to like it, not you. Well, I would like to see him in this, so I'll buy it for him. Well, maybe he doesn't want to wear that, though.